Dear colleagues, we continue our session Disruptive Technologies, and our next speaker, Ivan, speak about machine learning and cybersecurity.
Добрый день.
Good afternoon. Thank you for coming. Well, I can speak in Russian or in English. You can ask questions in any language, whatever you prefer. Well, in fact, first of all, before I begin, it's quite an interesting subject indeed. Despite the fact that we spend a lot of time, including vendors, as they tell us that we can use machine learning and we can link it with our security systems, but what you can connect on the other side and whether this paradigm is topical today. Maybe we're just trying to combat these attacks, hacking, and helping others to do this in a more efficient way. So let me first introduce myself and why I can talk to you about this. If you work with some vendors, I'm representing one of such vendors. So I'm sure that you work with different vendors or for these vendors. Our company, well, we are dealing with the application security. I'm a founder and CEO, also a researcher and bug hunter. And some time ago, I had to do something, in this wonderful industry with my own hands. So that's why I'm telling everyone about this, not only about from the viewpoint of my worldview, but I also would like to talk to people who are knowledgeable in that particular industry. So here is a square that demonstrates a balance between the so-called paper security and the security of guys in T-shirts. That's all I can tell you about these magic squares. But now I will go over to more practical things. So this slide shows that you need to find a good balance. So I once thought that the compliance is not going to work, but right now I think that you have to learn how to explain different things to people in different languages. So if compliance helps you to ensure personal security, it's good, it's useful, but if people do not understand how it was written, it would make no sense to deal with it anyway. So that's the end of this magic square. So before we proceed, let's talk a little bit about we see some definitions, how we understand machine learning, artificial intelligence, and neural networks. So I decided to take this picture from Wikipedia, and which explains how the artificial intelligence relates to real life. A few years ago, cognitive science came into being, which unites several sciences, actually, philosophy, linguistics, neurobiology, anthropology, and artificial intelligence as well. So this is needed just to answer the question how our mind works, what mindset is about, and it's important that people cannot live without these sciences. The artificial intelligence per se. So it, apart from other things that are quite important and the other multiple sciences around it, it's a machine learning comprising two: analytic algorithms and neural networks. That's the way we should look at it, and that will make it possible for you to better understand this terminology. So cognitive science helps us to understand how our mindset works, including linguistics, anthropology, and neurobiology. And the machine learning consists of two aspects: analytic algorithms, and neural networks, as I already mentioned. So I think it's quite trivial. Maybe not. So machine learning for cyber defenders. These are quite useful things, I should say, and starting with just dump marketing, and then technical people like me will have to be responsible for the words they pronounce. But so now we decided to split it into 4 categories: attack detection, bots, viruses, exploits. Anomaly detection is kind of a subgroup, but it can help you during different incidents, monitoring, and so on and so forth. Compromise when data are compromised, vulnerability detection. So actually the system defects that help us to defend ourselves, to prevent ourselves from different attacks. And risk analysis just helps us to prioritize all these areas where sometimes when we do not understand what is more relevant or less relevant to our solutions. So that's precisely is illustrated here by this nice dog, which that is serves these guys or the vendors, who I represent here, like right now. But on the other side, there are other guys with another dog that covers all these the aspects that I'm going to tell you about. And at the very end, I will tell you what it looks like against the overall backdrop, and whether there are more or less tools, which of these tools are used in research, and so on and so forth. First is bypassing protection: firewalls, antiviruses, IDS, APS, capture, any types of protection, automation, attacks, and so on that are needed in order to protect ourselves. Number 2 is a vulnerability detection that we have seen here. If we need the vulnerability detection to protect ourselves at this particular point, we need them so as to operate them. From which the next point arises, exploitation, or so the machine learning can help you how to use them. And number 4, the password guessing, where you can actually forecast how this certain password looks like. So the colleagues will correct me, those who are dealing with passwords. There might be some overlapping here. I'll show you later the results that we have obtained here. And number 5, that overlaps risk prioritization, as the guys on the other side of the barricades use compromised data prioritization and classification, that in order to understand what is more relevant to accounts, financial information, when there are quite much data, you understand that it's quite important because data analysis is really topical there. So that's basically all I want to cover in my presentation. First of all, bypassing protection, any kind of protection. Anti-bots, capture, etc., heuristics, including scoring, signatures, anomaly detection, statistical deviations, and neural networks that are also used for the detection of these mainly classificators. So all of these help us to bypass protection on the basis of machine learning, usually on the basis of neural networks. So first of all is the capture that you've seen when you were down in the reception, possibly, but there were other mechanisms. And yesterday we talked to our colleagues from R who were telling us about the antibots and how they managed to bypass capture. And so the machine is capable of reading from a picture and accepting visual information. The second option is whatever is protected by neural networks, adversarial examples, as we call it, as people understand how the neural network works and how to classify the images and what kind of noise have to be applied on this picture so as to make Gibbon from Panda. So there are many ideas behind this, and right here you can see this reference underneath, which you cannot see. But it's mainly needed to answer the question how this classifier that has been trained, which will not give you the outlet that we are expecting. And apart from that, we quite actively use this to attack the self-driving cars or autonomous cars, so as the printed road sign could be recognized by a human eye and by a machine. And other types which can be called adversarial examples. I have quite many pictures. Vulnerability detection. Well, it's probably the cutest, the most interesting of all the source code analysis that we use convolution, recurrent, and hybrid neural networks. Apart from detecting vulnerabilities for different bugs, well, in fact, this analysis of it's the source code analysis system. That enables us to prioritize risks after detection and to say whether it can be exploited or not, or we have any doubts with respect to its vulnerability. So there are links at the bottom of this slide, and so that's how the taxonomy looks like. You can see sectors, convolution networks, or some hybrid typology. So without going into much detail, there are no great results, but I'm expecting great future for that, especially when we have different codes and there are quite many ideas with business logics that we cannot cover with any other regular mechanisms. So as we can work with one application looking for some vulnerabilities in a particular machine. So the next one is fuzzing in vulnerability detection. Is the most popular technology, the most efficient way to detect vulnerabilities that found their way to old Intel and other processors last year, fuzzing. Well, basically, the task is to generate input data to cause anomalies during application execution. And what we can do, so quite often it leads to vulnerability during the operation. So fuzzing is the area of inaccurate solutions. So that's why we've tested a lot of different options here. First of all, it was about some manual operations and then different algorithms, and then we have arrived at neural networks. It was, they started to be applied quite extensively rather recently. So it is done in order to generate input data that will provide a more probable solutions in case of crashes or in case of some exceptions. So why we need that? We need that to work faster because we can try different options, but if you want to try to go through 4 bytes in input at a speed of 100,000 samples per second, so you need much more, up to 8 bytes maybe. But it's not that we have standard payloads for scanners, but on the basis of fuzzing, we can generate much more. And so the neural networks help us to generate much more. That's why we invest more in research, in academic and other types of research. So here are the details and links of these research materials. The biggest investment is from Microsoft, which last November published a very interesting work about MCR, Microsoft fuzzing based on neural networks. So that's basically the output of this research that they've done. It's good work. I made a presentation in Singapore about that in 2017, where we tested the fuzzer for web app. But the neural network can help you to generate. So fuzzing is such a good thing because the more payloads you have, the better. So that's every means of generation will be useful for you. Exploitation. The concept, the underlying concept is as follows. That's probably the stories that is least disclosed to the public, how to ensure this exploitation in terms of vulnerabilities. When talking about the other side of the barricades, I'm talking about offensive security. Well, of course, there's a defensive security, but I'm talking mainly about offensive security. So, well, basically, exploitation is a kind of thing which is too labor-consuming in real time when you are supposed to demonstrate certain results. Not only using the fuzzy logic, but you have to exploit this vulnerability. You have to build up a good exploit and to make it work, to make it adaptable to certain system. So that's the story behind this, which is not always easy. And at this point, the neural networks can help us a lot. That was really at the very outset when we started doing this. But DARPA held a contest on exploitation, and they were the winning bidders. And without any machine learning, they started disseminating these ideas. And I think that was a really unique contest because it was a kind of a singularity point which proved that you can automatically exploit different bugs and to write codes, access codes, but it's understandable that machine learning will be quite efficient in this way.
There's a lot of discussions of this. However, there are not very many specific solutions that one can come and use. One scarecrow that one could name is APT could become just PT because machine learning that will automate the advance, the A that advance stands for. I cannot name any good solution. Maybe people are not willing to share. Maybe the time has not come yet. I don't think we're going to see any big changes, big outcomes in the next 18 months. But people continue to do research, and I'm sure there will be some outcomes. So, item 4, my favorite theme, password guessing. A lot of things in security are based on port scanning and hashcats that do the password guessing. Every security expert knows this. Password guessing is about the ability to use old passports or password policy or leaked passwords. Can one predict, guess a new password? And of course, people would use hashes. There are two pieces of software that one can find at GitHub. It makes this task much easier. These are the tools that give quite impressive performance comparable to templates and various other things. They show comparable results under certain conditions. They have neural networks that will use a sample to guess symbols that can follow previous symbols. So if you know previous passwords, you can predict potential new passwords. This is not some theoretical research. These are working tools. And this really promotes machine learning in offensive strategy. The next thing in security field has to do with data prioritizing. When we look at infrastructure compromises, we need to decide what we need to do to understand how things work. Any machine learning story, any automation story will have to be looked at. The task has been addressed for data analysis, for classification, for risk prioritization. There are various types of use, and there are commercial solutions which can be obtained, and they can be used for offensive security to analyze data, to understand what is the most important stuff on a certain hard disk, or what is the most important stuff on a server. This can be done through use of manual rules, or one can use automatic tools. They can be put to very different tasks, and this is something that one can also find at GitHub. We looked at 5 different tasks that people on the offensive side look at. Now we can map all those things. We know that people like magic quadrants. Therefore, I decided to show you this picture. That's all these 5 tasks. They are put in an order of priority. Whether these things are used today. You can see that compromised data analysis is on top of other things. Production-ready tools with more proven results and other algorithms. It's just compromised data analysis. The mapping is working well. They know that I need to find certain types of data, and they can find it. The next category, 7 to 8, that's where we have practical results and tools applicable for common use cases. We may have a practical result, and we have tools. They may not be production ready, but they're there. We see a bypass mechanism and various other things like firewalls and all sorts of things based on AI. These tools can be downloaded, they can be tested and launched, and they will work. In the same category, we put password guessing. This is, again, something that is quite doable if there is a good database of old passwords, or if you have a lot of data from various leaked databases. That is, again, quite a possibility. Next item is vulnerability detection. The fuzzers are there. Of course, the systems are not production ready, but they still can be put to use. We could give it a lower grade, like 6, because this is not a well-tested technology. And the lowest grade that we have here, it's in the category between 0 and 2. that's research on the field of study. This is an area that we find quite relevant. A lot of people spend their time working on exploits, and machine learning can be very helpful. We may get the big idea how it can be done. We know of some contests that have been extremely instrumental to the industry, that have made a real leap forward. Now we know that one can develop software that will identify vulnerabilities and get access to other software. That's essentially it. I don't want to sell anything. Well, I want, but I won't do it now. If you have any questions, you can make the use of the time that we still have. I hope this was not too boring. I'm Ivan Gorshkov of Sberbank. Thank you very much for an interesting talk. You talked about the networks that will become subject of attack. Let me ask you about the networks that we have to protect. Networks may be randomly attacked many times. Are there ways to get protection? Well, this is a good question. It's about the way of getting many attack samples. We can use fuzzing. It's a very good mechanism that creates a lot of samples. If we are talking about the need to check our signatures, we can generate a lot of samples and test them. It works quite well, and it's not a difficult thing to do. It doesn't take machine learning to do this. It can be done manually, but we can use machine learning as well. Synthetic data is very important. It is not a big deal to create a big environment and try to attack that environment. We probably will see a lot of ways to get data. Well, I think that honeypots are very promising. You can make a lot of them, and then you can look at signatures. You will generate various payloads that will work for you. I have done that many times. Or you can find an analyst, pay a lot of money, and create an attacking group to attack Sberbank system. Any other questions? Well, then, thank you very much.